So the things you'll get are 2-inch straps, some leather pieces that will work as the connectors, some buckles and Chicago screws for the straps, a bunch of webbing for various straps and pieces for the bag, some grosgrain for binding, a zipper, and the materials to make the bag. Front and the back panel, a pocket, and the side and bottom panel. Things you need to provide are a flathead screwdriver, scissors, a seam ripper, and a sewing machine with thread. So first up, we're going to take the zipper out, and it has a pull and the teeth, and we have to actually attach the pull to the zipper. So if you notice on the teeth, they're kind of angled like this right now. If I flip it around, they're angled down. That's how you want to start. And how I start, this works best for me. It might be different for you. And if you watch other videos, it might be a little bit different. But what I do is I put the zipper with the teeth angled down. I put the pull on with everything connected. And then I push down my finger and I pull apart this. And you hear it click. And now it's on. But don't pull past this because then it's off and it's hard to get back on. So now we're going to sew the zipper onto our pocket. So this is the front side of the zipper. That's the pull side's up. And this is the front side of the fabric. The back side's sticky. The front side's not because it's waterproof fabric. So I'm going to take the top of the zipper and line it up with the top of the bag. And this is the outside of the zipper, outside the fabric, so now they're touching each other. So I'm going to sew a line all down here. So I feel like you can sew the zipper, you can probably sew this whole entire bag. This material is sticky, so what I do is I actually flip it over. And again, the zipper is still facing the outside to the outside. And I'll line that up. And I'll use this edge of my presser foot to kind of butt against the zipper because I can't see it, but I can feel it. And I'll just keep this edge lined up. Alright, so I want to make sure that this stays lined up. And I want to make sure this is against my zipper. Okay. And then when I get close to my zipper pull, I can't really go past it because it'll push me off the edge. So I make sure the needle is sunk down. I lift the foot and I push the zipper. I'll push it past the foot, so now it's over here. And this can go down all the way. And I'll just line that back up and finish it off. And I always backstitch, even though we're going to sew over top of this, just to make sure everything stays locked in place. Now I'm going to flip it over, so this is the front side, and I'm going to sew this side down. And you don't have to do this, but it looks nice, and you can kind of put it up against the zipper, and because I have red thread on the blue, it looks pretty nice. Again though, the zipper pull is here, so I'm going to pull it down a bit, so I have room. Sunk in, I can put this back on the other side. First thing I want to do actually on all my pieces is I'm going to fold them in half and I'm going to clip a tiny piece off on the bottom center of all of them. That one actually wasn't very good. Let me try that again on this one. Now I have this triangle shape here to help me line things up, and that's probably as big as you want to go. You don't want to go much bigger than that, or else you're going to put a big hole in the bottom of your bag. So the same for the other panel. And then this is our side and bottom panel. It's all one piece. It's really long, so you can kind of line up the top, two edges, pull it through. And I'll just crease it and do both sides. So now I can line this up. This is the outside of my fabric, and this is the outside. So I'll line these up. Alright, we have the pocket lined up, and first we're going to sew around the edge. Alright, you can sew over top of the zipper, just take your time so you don't bend the needle and break it. So I usually start above it, and then just really slowly go over top of it. And to give it some strength, you can reverse it, and go over top of it again. If you wanted to pin this instead, you could probably do that, but I don't have good luck with pinning. I've used staples before too, and that helps, but I prefer to actually sew it. It takes a little more time, but I think it works a lot better for me. So when I get here, I'm going to pinch the zipper together. Next, we're going to sew the top part of the zipper, and I'll use this side of my foot for a guide. It has kind of a wave to it, so we're just going to try and keep it as flat as we can while we sew it. And we're actually going to cover it with some webbing, so this sewing doesn't have to be perfect or even super low. You can put it kind of high. We just want it to kind of stay in place so we can work with the other pieces. So in this bag of webbing, you have all kinds of colors and sizes. Just open that whole thing up. Right now, we want this long purple one. You'll see that these are similar in size, but this one's a little bit longer. So the short one, this blue one, we can put those back in the bag. And we actually want one of the orange ones as well. So we're going to take the long one and one of the orange ones, and these we can set aside. Now we're going to sew this piece of webbing right in the middle here, and we can put it about here because we're going to cover the whole thing with this orange webbing, like so. So I like to fold this in half just to get my center mark. And if you want, you can chalk it or you can mark it with a pin or something, but just do a crease. Webbing. And the webbing is actually, it's melted on the ends, so it doesn't come unraveled. If you decide to cut it for whatever reason, try and melt that back or it will come unraveled, especially when you sew. If you sew this and it's not melted like that, it'll pull through. And now I can sew this piece of webbing on. So I can put it right up against the zipper. You don't want it on top of the zipper. It kind of interferes with the zipper if you have it that way. But just right against it's okay. Alright, so we have the front panel done, the zipper's on, everything's sewn. So now let's grab the back panel, and we're going to sew on the shoulder straps, the handle, and this short tiny piece, which goes on this piece. So you have, this is the bottom, this is the top. So this is the part we're going to sew onto the back with this little piece of webbing. So we're going to sew these three things onto the back panel, and then we're going to cover it with this orange piece. So first thing, I'm going to fold this in half, get my center mark again, just by creasing. And then I'm going to use the front panel as a guide to see about where I should put these pieces. So this will go across here, If you want, you can measure, you can do a lot of things, but I like just to kind of do it this way. It keeps it simple and it's pretty accurate. So that's going to be the top edge of where I'm going to sew. So these pieces will go about in the middle. So that one will go there. This one will go around that here. And then these will go here and here. There's not a lot of room with this one, so you gotta make sure that you don't put it too low to where you can't put the webbing on, and too high to where it doesn't get covered by the webbing. So about right here. And then I'll just go back and forth a couple of times so it's extra strong. Now I'll sew this on either side, so really you can just line it up next to it. And you can sew all the way across and then complete the loop like so. And now I'm going to sew the shoulder straps on. I like to have mine at an angle. If you want, you can just sew them just like this. You can just put them right in line with everything else. But I find for my shoulders, it's more comfortable if I angle them out a little bit. So I'm going to use this back corner here as my guide. And I'm also going to use this as my guide. So I'm going to put it about where my thread line is, where I'm sewing. That's going to be this corner. And then this corner will go on this edge. And then the same here. I'm going to put it right like so and line it up with this back corner. And now I'm going to sew this piece of webbing on just to cover everything up and make it look nice. So I'm going to make sure everything's covered. If I go too high, this might get this might show. If I go too low, then these might show. So just take your time and make sure everything is as it should be. Alright, now I want to flip it and sew the bottom edge. Alright, next you want to grab the webbing that has these diagonal cuts, and these are going to be the bottom of our straps, and we're going to place those about here at the top of that curve. So if you want, you can fold this to sort of mark both sides to make sure it's even. And we're going to sew this one right here, and then we're going to sew the other one the same way, just on the opposite side. Alright, we're getting really close. So now we're going to sew this long panel here around the entire edge of both the front and the back panel. So we're going to make sure that we know what side's the outside. This is the outside. And we'll start with the back panel, doesn't matter. And we're going to line up those cuts we made. So see those cuts? I'm going to line those up. And I like to tack it in place. And then I sew half of it first and then the other half. And that way everything stays even. If I try to do it differently, I've had problems where the bag gets really twisted and doesn't look right. So we'll line these up. And then what I'll do is I'll just keep going. And I'm just making sure the edges stay even. So this right here, it's going to get really bunched and twisted. Just take your time and go really slow. The most important thing is that you keep these edges nice and even. It's also important that you don't have sew like on the other side, since you can't see it. You don't want to miss one of the sides. So that's why it's nice to keep this distance consistent and to keep these edges very, very even. And so I always like to pull this piece to the center. If you pull it just out, you're going to have some weird bunching, and you don't want that. So you can see here, I'm keeping this edge even. At the same time, I'm not getting this all bunched up here. And we're going to have quite a bit of gap here, or sorry, a bit of excess, so I just sew to this side, and then I go back. And when we're done, we'll cut these pieces off. And now on this one, instead of starting from the top, when I try that, it's hard to get the exact amount of material correct. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to sew it from this side, the curved side. And this side I find to be a little bit easier because you can see the curve and you can use both hands to sort of twist it together. Another thing too, you have all these straps inside. You want to make sure these don't get caught in the thread. You can't really see them, but you should be able to feel them, but just make sure they're not in the way. Alright, now we can cut these flaps off. So usually I just take scissors and I just really carefully just cut across. If you want, you can draw a line and all that. But we're going to cover this with some binding, some grow grain. So see how that's kind of slanted? It's not perfect, which is my fault, but more practice you get a little bit better and better. So if you notice here, this piece is sticking out quite a bit. That was my fault. I think I didn't make it even on the other side, but I need to trim this because I'm going to cover this with binding, and that's going to get in the way. But if I cut it, it's going to get rid of that melted part, and it's going to want to unravel. So either I need to stitch it a bunch of times here, or I need to take something hot like a lighter or a match and melt that. So you probably shouldn't do that unless you have permission to do so. So I would just sew it a few times so that doesn't unravel. So we're going to use this grow grain, that's what it's called, to cover these edges. It looks much nicer, and that can help with these pieces unraveling. See how it's already coming fuzzy? If it unravels too much, it'll actually pull out through the thread, especially the webbing part. So we're going to just cover the edges with this. So the blue, you have two pieces. This part is kind of tricky, so just take your time, go really slowly, and if you mess up, you can undo it, but it's not going to show because it's inside the bag, but it is good practice to make it look nice. So I just start by pinching it around and trying to make sure it's even. So you want to sew both sides at the same time. part's kind of tricky because it's curved, so just take your time. Alright, I got both sides sewn with the blue, and now I'm going to sew around the top edge with the purple. So I'm actually going to turn it right side out because that's the side that's going to show. And really it's not going to show at all because it's a roll top and it'll be covered up most of the time. But when it's unrolled, we want it to look nice. So I'm going to sew on this side so I can see what I'm sewing. And I'm also going to start in the center here because I'm going to have a seam. So you can pick the front or the back. You can pick wherever you want. But you're going to have a seam. So I'll start about here in the center. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to overlap it. But I'm going to tuck it under too. And I'll show you how that looks. So we'll start here. When I get here, I'm going to fold that piece of binding toward the side panel. And then I'm going to fold this one again toward the side panel, just so they're consistent, they lay flat. So I'm going to trim these so they don't stick out. And then I'm going to fold this back as even as I can. And try and keep everything the same. So right here. Alright, so we are getting really close. So now I need to connect the shoulder straps to this adjustment strap here. But to do that, we have to connect all this together. So in this bag, you have these to adjust the length of your shoulder straps. And we want to connect this to this with this. So we'll use this piece of leather. And we're going to use something called Chicago screws to fasten that. And this will be inside, and then we'll run that through. So first thing, let's put these on so you can fold these flaps to the center. And this is the bottom and the outside. And we're just going to place it through the middle and then through the top, making sure that the leather, the nice part's on the outside. And we're going to pull that tight. We're going to place this on the webbing, and it has holes that are melted so they don't come unraveled. And you have Chicago screws, and that's why you need the screwdriver. So you'll take the Chicago screw. So it has two pieces. One has a thread, and one takes the thread, like so. I prefer this part on the underside, the part with the slit. So that means this piece will go on the outside. So pop that through that hole, and then through this one, and then this goes on top, and then the one with the slit goes on. And I need to grab my screwdriver that I've already lost. Alright, and then I just tighten that up. And that's what it looks like on the front. So do that for all four. Alright, now we just got to take the bottom pieces feed them through. Flip over the bag and attach the buckle. Goes through the top like that. Then through the bottom. And then we roll our bag. And clip it. And that's it. We have a backpack.